Have you ever had that moment when the person you trust more than anybody else looks straight at you, and you suddenly understand they are not really seeing you at all? I was sitting on the edge of our bed, shoulders slumped, voice low, almost begging. It had been a full month. Not even a simple goodnight kiss. I kept my eyes on her, hoping that if I said it out loud, maybe it would shake something loose between us. Maybe it would crack the wall that had grown where we used to stand close. My wife, Nicole, the woman I had been married to for 8 years, did not even blink. She let out a slow breath like I had just asked for something unreasonable. "That is not what makes a family, David," she said, with that sharp little scoff that cuts deeper than yelling ever could. Her words did not just hit me. They dug in. I sat there, stunned. She stood under the soft yellow light of the bedside lamp, arms folded tight across her chest, chin lifted like she had just spoken some great truth about life. But it did not feel wise. It felt like getting slapped and then told I deserved it. "That is not what makes a family," I repeated. My voice sounded thick, like it was pushing through mud. She was already turning away from me. "You act like I am supposed to put on a show just because you feel ignored. Maybe try connecting on an emotional level instead of counting days on a calendar." Then she walked out. The bedroom door shut with a quiet click. A small sound, but it echoed. I could hear her footsteps moving into the living room. The couch had become her new place. Lately, she had been spending more nights out there than beside me. I stared at the pillow next to mine. Her side of the bed was still neat, the sheets pulled tight, barely touched. It is strange how cold a bed can feel when only one person leaves it. I laid back and looked up at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles above me. It did nothing to fight the chill that had settled between us. I kept asking myself the same question. How did we get here? Not long ago, people looked at us like we were some kind of example. They would say, "That is real love right there." We bought this little house in Glendale. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms. Floors that creaked when you walked across them. A backyard big enough for barbecues we always talked about hosting but never actually did. I worked my regular 9-to-5 job at the insurance office. I would come home with takeout in my hands, tired but satisfied. Nicole would greet me with that half smile of hers, pretending she was not hungry, even though she always was. We had our routines. We had jokes that nobody else would understand. We had little traditions that made the days feel stitched together. We had each other. Now she would not even turn around to look at me. I rolled onto my side. The lamp threw my shadow across the wall, stretching it out long and strange. I barely recognized the man lying there. I told myself to be patient. Every marriage has rough patches. That is what people say. But that night something inside me finally snapped into focus. I was not just frustrated. I was starving. Starving for closeness. For warmth. For something that felt real. And instead of that, I got a lecture about what a family is supposed to be. I am not a perfect man. I leave my socks in pairs on the floor instead of the hamper. I keep my worries to myself until they turn heavy. I do not always say the right thing. But I loved her. At least I thought I did. Lately, I started wondering if she ever really let me love her, or if I was just playing a part she had written for me years ago and forgotten to update. Have you ever felt your heart split just a little bit? Not from some big explosion. Not from shouting or betrayal. Just from the steady weight of what is missing. Lying there in the quiet hum of that bedroom, I understood something that scared me. The silence between us was not just a phase. It was settling in. And deep down, I had this feeling that whatever was really wrong had not even come to the surface yet. The problem with silence is that it does not stay inside one room. It leaks. It spreads into the mornings, into the kitchen, into the small spaces between two people who once shared everything, even the same tube of toothpaste. 3 days passed after that night. Nicole was still on the couch. I say sleeping, but that might not be the right word. Most mornings I would walk into the living room and find her flat on her back, her phone resting on her chest, the blue glow lighting up her face. Instagram would still be open. She would be smiling at pictures and comments from people who had no idea what our house felt like. She never brought up the argument. Not one time. She moved around the house like nothing had changed. She brushed her hair in the hallway mirror. She scrolled through her phone at the kitchen counter. She laughed out loud at text messages that did not make sense to me. Meanwhile, I started staying later at the office. Not because I had deadlines. Not because I was chasing a promotion. I just did not want to walk back into that heavy quiet. I told myself it was harmless. A few extra emails. Dinner with coworkers. Talking about sports and traffic and nothing important. But the truth was, I was avoiding my own house. Affection can disappear faster than you think. She used to send me little messages during the day. Jokes about our strange neighbors. Pictures of the mess our cat made knocking something off a shelf. Small things, but they made me feel included. Now hours would pass without a word. If I texted her something simple like, "How is your day going?" I would get a thumbs up. Or just the letter K. That was it. There was a time when she was the first person I wanted to talk to about anything. If the vending machine at work got replaced, I would tell her. If someone said something funny in a meeting, she would hear about it. Now I would type out a message and stop halfway through, because I knew she would not care. Or worse, she would pretend to care so badly that it would hurt more. So I started reaching out to other people. Old college buddies. A couple of guys from the gym. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing dramatic. Just regular conversation. Talking about workouts. Talking about life. Just hearing someone respond with interest. That is when it hit me. I was craving warmth like a man stuck outside in a snowstorm. And the woman I married was handing me ice. One night, I came home later than usual. The house was quiet except for the television playing softly in the background. Nicole was on the couch again, phone in her hand. She did not ask where I had been. She did not ask why I was late. She barely lifted her eyes. I set my keys down on the kitchen counter louder than normal. A small test, just to see if she would react. She did not even flinch. Instead of looking up at me or asking how my day went, she said, "Can you take the trash out before you go to sleep?" That was it. No hello. No welcome home. Just a chore. It felt like we were two roommates splitting bills instead of a married couple who once could not keep their hands off each other. This was the same woman who used to press herself against my chest when thunder shook the windows. I carried the trash out without another word. Later, I stood in the kitchen staring at the refrigerator. It was covered in magnets from trips we used to take together. Las Vegas. Aspen. That camping trip that ended early because she could not stand the mosquitoes, and we packed up at sunrise, laughing the whole drive back. Now those magnets looked like souvenirs from somebody else's marriage. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the counter. Nicole was stretched out on the couch, laughing into her phone. Not laughing with me. Laughing with whoever was on the other end of that call. I watched her without meaning to. The way she twisted a piece of hair around her finger. The way her voice dropped into something softer when she said, "You always know exactly what to say." She had not spoken to me like that in months. Maybe I was imagining it, but I could have sworn she glanced toward me for half a second, like she knew I was there, like she wanted me to hear it. She did not lower her voice. She did not move to another room. She just kept laughing gently, like I was invisible, like I was not supposed to be part of that moment. That night, I did not even try to sleep in our bed. I grabbed my pillow, walked into the guest room, and shut the door behind me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, just like I had a few nights before. And I knew something inside this marriage was cracking. Not because we were screaming at each other. Not because plates were breaking. Because nothing was happening at all. And honestly, that scared me more. A few days later, it was Tuesday. One of those gray afternoons where the sky cannot decide if it wants to rain or clear up. I was at the gym, sitting on the bench press between sets. My arms felt heavier than they should have. My chest felt tight, and not from the workout. "Hey, you all right?" That was Ryan. I see him 3 times a week. We spot each other, talk about regular guy stuff. He is not nosy, but he pays attention. I shook my head. No, not really. He set his weights down and sat across from me, elbows resting on his knees. "You want to talk about it?" And I did. Not everything. Just enough. I told him Nicole barely noticed me anymore. That our house felt loud, even when it was quiet. I did not tell him about her sleeping on the couch. I did not mention the short text messages or the phone calls that made my stomach twist. I just told him it felt like I was slowly disappearing inside my own life. Ryan listened the whole time without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded once. "Sounds like you are bleeding out in slow motion," he said. That line stayed with me. Then he said, "You need space. Not to run away. Not to cheat. Not to blow everything up. Just step back. Give yourself room to breathe." I stayed quiet. "Move into the guest room," he continued. Not to punish her, just to draw a line. Sometimes when somebody stops seeing you, the only way to remind them you exist is to step out of the frame on purpose. It sounded like advice that came from experience. That night when I got home, I did not even look toward the living room. Nicole was there, of course, stretched out on the couch watching some drama show with the volume louder than it needed to be. She did not speak. Neither did I. I brushed my teeth, grabbed an extra blanket, and walked straight into the guest room. I did not slam the door. I did not make a show of it. I just closed it softly. Let me tell you something. Silence feels different when you are the one choosing it. The guest room was small. A full-size bed. A desk we never used. A lamp with a flickering bulb I had meant to fix for months. I lay down fully dressed, staring up at the ceiling, waiting. I thought maybe she would knock. Maybe she would text me from the other side of the wall. Maybe she would call out, "So you are sleeping in there now?" Nothing. The next few nights went the same way. I would come home, eat quietly, go into the guest room, close the door. She did not ask questions. If anything, she seemed more relaxed. And that part hurt the most. Deep down, I had hoped the distance would spark something in her. Regret, anger, even sarcasm. Anything that showed I still mattered. Instead, all I got was calm. Cold, detached calm. I started spending more time at the gym. I ate lunch with coworkers instead of rushing home. I began running again in the evenings, just around the block. Not far. Just enough to burn off the restless buzzing in my chest. The days became functional. Not good. Not terrible. Just numb. Then one evening, after a long stretch on the treadmill, I was heading out to the parking lot when I heard someone call my name. David. I turned around. It was Kayla, Nicole's younger sister. I had not seen her in months. She walked up wearing an oversized hoodie and sneakers, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Did not expect to see you here," she said with a small smile. "You look exhausted." I forced a weak grin. "Is it that obvious?" She tilted her head, her voice gentle. "Are you okay?" For a second, I almost told her everything. Almost let it spill out right there between the rows of parked cars. But I swallowed it. "I am working on it," I said. Kayla looked at me in a way I had not felt in a long time. Not judging, not disappointed, just seeing me. And standing there in that quiet parking lot outside the gym, I felt something I had almost forgotten. I felt visible, not as a failing husband, not as half of a broken marriage, just as a man. The birthday party was for a guy down the street named Brian. He was the kind of man who treated grilling like it was a professional competition. Steaks, chicken, ribs, he handled it all like there was a trophy on the line. I did not even want to go. Nicole insisted. "We cannot have the neighbors talking," she said while walking past me, not even looking in my direction. So we went. Together, technically. The second we stepped into the backyard, she drifted away from me like smoke. A drink was already in her hand before I even grabbed a soda. She slipped into a loud circle of people laughing too hard at jokes that were not that funny. I stood near the cooler, nodding at people I recognized. I sipped warm soda because I did not trust myself with alcohol that night. I knew if I started drinking, the hurt might start talking. The sun had just dipped below the rooftops. String lights were hanging across the patio, casting everything in a soft golden glow. Kids ran through the yard waving glow sticks. Music played low in the background. The smell of barbecue hung thick in the air, warm and familiar. It should have felt comforting. It did not. I spotted Nicole across the yard. She was standing in a small group. Brian, his wife, a couple of neighbors, and her sister, Kayla. That is when I heard it, clear enough to cut through the music. "He does not deserve intimacy from me." The laughter around her died instantly. The group went quiet. Not normal quiet. The kind of quiet that feels staged, like someone just ripped the needle off a record. I froze. My ears rang. Those words felt heavy, sharp, meant to travel across that yard and land right in my chest. I did not move. I did not speak. But I felt my face tighten, the way you brace yourself when you know something humiliating is about to happen in public. Not because of the pain, because everyone is watching. Nicole was smiling, a little tipsy, proud of herself. And then Kayla stepped forward. She shrugged slightly, her voice calm in a way that made it even more powerful. "Then I guess he can get it from me." Silence fell like a curtain. You could hear someone clear their throat. A soda can pop open. Nothing else. Nicole's smile slipped. She blinked like she could not process what just happened, like she had tossed out something explosive and did not expect anyone to throw it back. My heart started pounding. I did not know if I was more shocked by what Kayla said or by how steady she sounded when she said it. She did not look at her sister. She looked at me, just for a second. Then she gave me the faintest smile and walked past the group toward the driveway. And I followed her, not because I had a plan, but because standing there felt impossible. We walked without speaking until we reached her car, parked under a street lamp along the curb. The light cast a pale glow over everything. She leaned back against the driver's side door, crossing her arms like she was waiting for me to say something. I glanced back toward the yard. Through the hedges, I could see Nicole standing stiff, her face drained of color. "You did not have to do that," I finally said. Kayla tilted her head. "Did I not?" "She was humiliating you," she added before I could answer. "In front of people who were pretending not to listen." "Yeah," I said quietly. I noticed. I tried to speak again, but she cut me off gently. You did not deserve that, David. Nobody does. We stood there under that street lamp, the muffled sound of the party still floating through the air. I felt stuck in place. Confused. Embarrassed. Grateful. All of it tangled together. Kayla's expression softened. I was not trying to cause drama, she said. But I have watched you carry that marriage like it is a backpack full of bricks. And I do not care what anyone says. Love is not supposed to leave bruises. I swallowed hard. She reached for her car door. Do you need a ride? I hesitated only a second. Then I nodded. When I slid into the passenger seat, something shifted inside me. For the first time in a long time, it did not feel like I was walking away from something broken. It felt like I might be stepping toward something honest. Kayla did not start the engine right away. We just sat there under the stars. The night wrapped around us, quiet and patient. The silence was not tense. It was not awkward. It was calm. The kind of quiet that lets you breathe after holding it in too long. She looked over at me, fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel. Are you okay? I stared down at my hands. I do not know. She nodded slowly, like that answer made sense. That was hard to watch, she said. She should not have said that. I let out a tired laugh. That was not even the worst part. She waited. The worst part is that it did not surprise me. Her eyes held mine a second longer than normal. You deserve better, she said softly. We ended up talking for almost an hour. Not about the party. Not really about Nicole. We talked about life. Kayla said she never expected to be the one defending someone else's marriage in her own family. She told me she used to think love was about big gestures and perfect holiday dinners, that it was supposed to look polished. But she learned it was really about small, steady kindness. About showing up. About consistency. I told her I used to believe the same thing. The windows were down. Warm summer air drifted through the car. It felt like we were sharing something quiet and private, even though we were parked right on our own street. She admitted she had noticed the way Nicole looked through me instead of at me. I told her I had almost forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. At one point, our hands brushed against each other on the center console. Neither of us pulled away, but we did not kiss. We just sat there, letting that small contact say what neither of us was ready to. There was no sudden spark, no dramatic music playing in the background, no moment where we leaned in and crossed a line, just a shared breath, a pause where something could have happened, but it did not. Because sometimes the deepest kind of closeness is not physical. Sometimes it is just sitting next to someone while your whole world feels like it is falling apart and realizing you are not alone in it. After a while, I leaned back in the seat and let out a slow breath. I should probably head home, I said. Kayla nodded, but her voice was soft when she answered. Do you want to? That question hit harder than anything else that night. Because I did not know. I looked at her, really looked at her, not as my wife's sister. Not as someone who had just defended me, just as a person sitting there with me under the stars. Thank you for standing up for me tonight, I said. She gave me a small smile. It was not flashy. It was real. You did not need me to, she said. But I wanted to. She drove me back and stopped at the end of my driveway. I stepped out and watched her tail lights fade down the street until they disappeared. When I walked through the front door, Nicole was standing in the kitchen, phone in her hand, acting like the night had been completely ordinary. She did not ask where I had been. She did not ask who I left with. And for the first time in a long time, I did not care. Because I had not been wandering. I had just found a small piece of myself again. The next morning felt strange. Not loud. Not explosive. Just off. Sunlight poured through the windows like it was any other day. But the air in the house felt tight, like the walls were waiting for something. Nicole stood in the kitchen in her robe, stirring creamer into her coffee. The spoon hit the side of the mug again and again. Too steady, too deliberate, like she needed the noise to fill the space between us. Good morning, she said casually, not looking up. Morning, I answered, setting my keys down on the counter a little harder than necessary. She took a sip and finally glanced over at me. A small smile tugged at her lips. It looked practiced. Did you sleep okay? She asked. I studied her face. There were faint dark circles under her eyes. The corner of her mouth twitched just enough to betray the calm she was trying to wear. I did, I said. You? She shrugged. The couch is not great, but you already know that. The silence that followed lasted just a second too long. I opened the refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned back against the counter. Her phone lit up on the kitchen island behind her. 3 notifications in a row from a group chat. Then nothing. Nicole reached for it quickly. She swiped the screen, paused, and let her thumb hover before turning the phone face down. That was when I knew. Something was unraveling. She still had not mentioned the party. Not the comment she made. Not Kayla's response. Not the way the entire yard went quiet. But it was there, hanging between us. That morning her phone did not buzz as often as usual. And when it did, she would read something, force a half smile, and then lose it just as fast. I watched her scroll through her apps like she was searching for somewhere to land. Finally, she looked up at me. "You are quiet." "So are you," I replied. She gave a light laugh, trying to smooth it over. "We do not have to talk all the time. Some mornings can just exist." But this was not peaceful silence. This was awareness. Her words at that party had not just hit me. They had hit the whole neighborhood. And now people were reacting. I did not need to argue. The shift was happening on its own. Around noon, I checked my phone. 2 messages from neighbors. "Are you okay, man?" I saw what she said. That was not right. Simple texts. But they meant more than I expected. I did not respond. I just stared at the screen, then looked across the room at Nicole. She was typing quickly, jaw tight. She glanced up and caught me watching her. "What?" she asked sharply. "Nothing." "No. Seriously. What?" I kept my voice calm. "I just wonder if you even remember what you said last night." Her eyes narrowed. The confidence behind them flickered. "It was a joke," she said. "Do not tell me you are going to hold on to that." I did not answer. I did not need to. She let out a scoff, stood up, and started clearing plates from the table even though breakfast had been finished for hours. "People are way too sensitive," she muttered. "One comment, and everyone acts like the world is ending." I let the quiet fill the room. Her mask slipped a little more. Later that afternoon, I walked past her phone again. The group chat was still open. This time the tone had changed. No new invitations. No laughing emojis. Just unread replies. And one message from someone named Melissa that said, "You should probably apologize." That was not okay. Nicole had not responded. She stood at the sink washing the same coffee mug over and over, like it was the only solid thing she could hold on to. She did not realize it yet, but the consequences had already started. Not with yelling, not with doors slamming, with something colder. People deciding what they saw, and who they believed. And for once, I was all right letting her sit in that feeling. Kayla and I had not planned anything. That is what I kept telling myself. Kayla and I did not sit down one day and decide to start meeting. There was no plan, no secret agreement. It just unfolded on its own. One week it was coffee at the little cafe hidden behind the grocery store. The next week it was a slow walk through the park on Sunday afternoon. Nothing dramatic, nothing reckless. Just 2 people trying to remember how to breathe. It started small. One morning she sent me a message. A dumb joke about middle-aged knees and how stairs feel like a personal attack. I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Not because it was the funniest thing in the world. Because it felt easy. Light. Like I was allowed to smile again. Later that week we met at the cafe. She showed up in a loose cream sweater and jeans. No makeup performance. No trying too hard. I like that. She did not arrive wearing a mask. She just showed up as herself. "Still drinking black coffee?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from me. "Still holding on to peppermint tea like it is medicine?" I shot back. That was our rhythm. Familiar. Playful. But underneath that surface, something warmer lived. Not lust. Not some wild passion. Comfort. Recognition. We talked about family most of the time. She told me what it was like growing up with Nicole. How their parents cared more about appearances than honesty. How everything had to look perfect from the outside. How she learned early to listen for what people were not saying. I told her about my parents splitting up when I was 14. How the silence in that house felt heavier than the arguments. How I promised myself I would never let my own marriage turn into that kind of quiet. She listened. Really listened. She did not interrupt. She did not try to correct me or turn my pain into a life lesson. That alone felt like a gift. As the weeks passed, I started noticing small things. Kayla always made space for my words. She never rushed me. Never tried to fix me. She did not twist everything into some moral speech. She just let me exist. And that is when I realized what I had been missing. It was not just affection. It was not even love. It was the right to sit next to someone without feeling like I had to perform. One evening, after a longer walk through the Arboretum trails, we ended up on a bench near the pond. Ducks drifted across the water. Kids laughed somewhere in the distance. The sun hung low, pouring soft amber light over everything. Kayla turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you still want to save your marriage?" The question landed square in my chest. Not like an attack. More like a mirror I had been avoiding. "I do not know," I said honestly. There is a difference between staying and surviving. She nodded slowly, eyes still on the water. I respect that you have been careful, she said. You are not rushing into anything. You still believe in your vows. I looked at her. I did. Maybe I still do. But a vow takes two people. One person cannot hold it together alone. That was the first time I said it out loud. The man who believed in marriage above everything was starting to believe in himself more. Kayla smiled softly, like she understood exactly what that meant. And in that moment, I felt something shift. I was not chasing Nicole's approval anymore. I was not waiting for her to notice the damage she had done. Kayla did not just see the damage. She saw me standing in the middle of it. When someone looks at you like that, without asking you to shrink, without asking you to apologize for taking up space, it changes you. It makes you wonder why you ever accepted being invisible. A few days later, I went up into the attic looking for the old camping lantern. The weather forecast mentioned storms again, and I figured it would be smart to have it ready. Nicole had put it somewhere after that power outage last winter. The attic smelled like dust and cardboard and forgotten years. I pulled the chain on the single bare bulb. Yellow lights spilled across stacks of holiday decorations and boxes we had not opened since we moved in. I was not searching for anything important. Then I saw it. A plain shoebox tucked behind a pile of wrapping paper tubes and a cracked plastic Halloween bucket. No label, just brown cardboard. The second I opened it, something inside me tightened. At first it looked harmless. Old Valentine's Day cards with glitter hearts and cheesy messages. Then I found folded notes. Handwritten. Flirty. Folded into little squares the way kids pass notes in school. And at the bottom, under a wrinkled envelope, were photographs. 5 of them. Nicole smiling next to another man. His arm around her waist. His lips pressed against her cheek. The dates were stamped in the corners. Earlier this year. Right around the time she stopped touching me. Right around the time she stopped laughing at my jokes. Right around the time she stopped trying. My hands started to shake. Not with rage. Not even with grief. With something colder. A quiet understanding. All the pieces slid into place at once. Her distance. Her mockery. That cruel comment at the party. It was not just emotional drift. It was cover. A way to keep me blaming myself, so I would not look too closely at the truth. I sat down on the attic floor with that shoebox in my lap. The bulb above me buzzed faintly, casting a dull yellow light over everything. I did not cry. I did not yell. I just stared at the evidence. There is a kind of heartbreak that does not explode. It settles, like a weight you suddenly realize has been sitting on your chest for months. Slowly, I placed everything back inside the box. Not to protect her, not to pretend I had not seen it, but because I understood something clearly now. I knew exactly what I had to do next. When I came down from the attic, Nicole was in the living room with the television on. Her legs were tucked under her, and her phone was lying face down on the couch cushion beside her. She glanced up at me for half a second. "Did you find the lantern?" she asked casually. "Not yet," I said. I kept walking. She did not notice the change in my voice. She did not notice the way my steps had slowed and steadied. But something inside me had gone still. That restless need to be seen by her? Gone. I was not searching anymore. I was getting ready. The kitchen smelled like citrus cleaner and dish soap. Nicole stood at the sink, humming off-key while rinsing a glass. She had no idea that the man walking into that room was carrying the end of our marriage in his hands. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching her. I knew her movements by heart. The way she dried a glass. The way she brushed her hair behind her ear. 1,000 mornings burned into memory. But right then, she felt like a stranger wearing her face. "Nicole," I said. She turned, still holding the dish towel. "Hey, did you ever find that lantern?" Instead of answering, I stepped forward and placed a stack of papers on the counter between us. Clean. Official. Final. Her eyes dropped to the top page. She blinked once. Then again. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "You know what it is." The towel slipped from her hand and fell into the sink with a soft splash. She stepped closer and read the bold letters at the top. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "David," she whispered. "Wait. What is this?" "I am not going to yell," I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. "I am not even going to ask why. I found the cards. And the photographs. I know." The color drained from her face. "I can explain," she said quickly. "No," I replied gently but firmly. "You really cannot." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She reached toward the papers like she needed to feel them to believe they were real. Her fingers brushed the corner and then dropped. Tears filled her eyes fast and messy. "David, please. I did not mean for any of that to To what? I asked. To be discovered? Or to matter? She sank into a chair like her legs had given up on her. I still love you, she said. That line was automatic, worn thin from overuse. It almost made me smile. Not because it was funny, because it sounded empty. I believe you loved the comfort I gave you, I said quietly. The stability. The silence. You loved knowing I was not going anywhere. She covered her face with her hands. You do not understand. I have been so lonely. So you filled the space, I said. You chose someone else. And left me sleeping next to a ghost. You laughed at me. You humiliated me. She looked up at me, mascara already streaked. I made a mistake. I messed up. But I am still here. Does that not count for something? I shook my head. No. Staying after the damage is not love. It is guilt. And guilt does not build anything. Her shoulders slumped. I slid the papers closer to her. I signed them this morning. All that is left is you. She stared at the pages like she did not recognize the language. You are really going to walk away? She asked. I already did, I said. You just did not notice. I turned toward the door. Then I paused and looked back one last time. I never needed revenge, I told her. You were always going to face your own consequences. Then I walked out. The door shut behind me with a quiet click. Soft. Final. Outside, the air smelled like rain and something clean. I took a deep breath, and it felt like the first real one I had taken in years. I did not know exactly where I was headed, but I knew this much. I was done carrying the weight of someone else's choices. The road stretched out ahead of me, long and open. Not eerie, not lonely, peaceful. I drove with the windows halfway down. One hand rested on the steering wheel. The other tapped lightly against the door in time with whatever song was playing low on the radio. Then, almost without thinking, I reached for my phone. Kayla's name was pinned at the top of my messages. There was one unread text. I know things are changing, it said. If you ever want to talk, or just sit quietly and not talk at all, I am here. Simple. No pressure. Just her showing up again. I hit call. She answered on the second ring. Hey, she said softly. Hey. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just honest. Like we both understood this moment mattered. Do you want to grab lunch? I asked. Somewhere quiet. I could hear the smile in her voice before she spoke. I was hoping you would call. We met at a small place off Main Street. Half cafe, half bookstore. The kind of place where people speak in low voices even when they do not have to. She was already there when I walked in. A cup of tea in front of her. Her hair pulled back loosely. A book resting face down beside her plate. When she looked up and saw me, she did not look surprised. She just looked steady. And for the first time in a long time, so did I. When I walked into that little cafe, Kayla stood up as soon as she saw me. She did not say anything at first. She just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. It was not dramatic, not desperate, just a steady hug, the kind that holds you together without trying to fix you. I sat down across from her, and for a moment we just looked at each other. No rush, no awkward scramble for words. You okay? She asked. I nodded slowly. I am getting there. Her eyes searched mine like she was checking for cracks. And maybe there were still a few, but they did not feel like damage anymore. They felt like open ground. We ate slowly, talked even slower. We talked about how strange it is to start over, how painful it can be to leave a life you once begged God to protect. We talked about the difference between being wanted and being chosen. I told her I had spent too many years confusing the two. I used to think love meant never leaving, I said quietly. Kayla tilted her head. And now I think love might begin the moment you stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. She reached across the table and rested her hand on mine. No hesitation, no hidden motive. You did not fail, she said. You just stopped pretending. That sentence landed deeper than any apology Nicole could have offered. After lunch, we walked out to her old Corolla. Same car she drove the night of the birthday party. The night, everything cracked open. We stood there in the parking lot a little longer than necessary. I do not know what happens next, I admitted. She smiled softly. You do not have to. She leaned in and rested her forehead gently against mine. For the first time in years, I did not feel broken. I felt free. Thanksgiving came quicker than I expected. One week I was signing divorce papers. The next I was learning how to build a routine that did not revolve around someone else's moods. The leaves changed. The house felt quieter. But it was not that hollow, suffocating quiet from before. This quiet had space in it. When Kayla invited me to her family's Thanksgiving dinner, I hesitated. It is just food, she said. No pressure. No announcements. You do not even have to bring anything. Just come. I brought a pie anyway. Store-bought. Still warm from the bakery. We pulled up to her parents' house, an old colonial with a wraparound porch. The smell of cinnamon hit me as soon as the door opened, and I realized something right away. I did not feel like an outsider. I felt like someone walking back into something steady. Her family welcomed me easily. No tension. No side comments. It felt like they had quietly decided long ago where they stood. Maybe they made that choice before I even walked through the door. We moved into the dining room. A long oak table covered in fall colors. Candles flickering. Laughter filling the space. Kayla touched my arm lightly as she guided me to the seat beside hers. Her hand lingered just a second longer than necessary. Then the room shifted. Nicole walked in. Alone. She looked different. Not thinner in body. Thinner in presence. Like something had been stripped away from her. She wore a polite smile. The kind people use when they know they have been talked about, but pretend they do not care. Her eyes moved to me. Then to Kayla. Then to our hands resting close together on the table. She said nothing. Just nodded slightly and took a seat near the far end between two distant cousins who barely looked up. Dinner began. Silverware clinked. Stories flowed. People laughed the way families do when they feel whole. Through all of it, Nicole stayed quiet. She sipped her wine, reached for the bread basket, tried to anchor herself to something familiar. But no one leaned toward her. No one asked her to tell a story. No one waited for her approval. The room had shifted, and it was no longer hers to control. At one point, I caught her staring across the table. Not directly at me, not even at Kayla, but at the space we filled together. The ease, the soft laughter, the comfort that did not require effort. She did not look angry. She looked empty. That was when I understood something clearly. There would be no dramatic apology, no last-minute redemption speech. Her consequences were not loud. They were quiet. They showed up in conversations that continued without her, in glances that no longer searched her face for permission, in a holiday that felt complete even with her sitting right there. Later that evening, after dessert, Kayla and I stepped out onto the porch. The air was cold and crisp, the kind of cold that feels clean. She handed me a mug of cider and leaned against the railing. "You okay?" she asked. I looked through the window at the warm light inside, at the laughter, at the empty seat Nicole had left when she stepped away and nobody noticed. "Yeah," I said. "I am." Kayla rested her head on my shoulder, and the night settled around us. Not heavy, not final, clear. I spent years begging someone to see me. Now I was surrounded by people who never looked away. Here is what I have learned. You do not always get closure in the form of an apology. Sometimes you get it in who chooses to stay, and who quietly fades away. Sometimes the strongest kind of justice is simply living well in full view of the ones who underestimated you.